Logan Carter sat in his car, staring at the illuminated screen of his phone. The message thread with Selena was open. Long, one-sided conversations, texts left on read, vague excuses, and empty promises. Tonight was no different. Selena, busy, maybe later. A 3-word dismissal. He exhaled sharply, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. He already knew how this night would end. She'd text at midnight, expecting him to come over, to drop everything because she had finally decided to acknowledge his existence. And for years he had, through the cold silences, the missed calls, the last-minute cancellations, Logan had always been there, waiting. He used to think of it as devotion, proof of his love. But lately, that word tasted bitter. Wasn't love supposed to be reciprocated? Wasn't love supposed to feel good? Tonight, something cracked inside him. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was clarity, maybe it was just enough. Logan picked up his phone again, but this time, he didn't type a reply. He didn't try to call. Instead, he did something he had never done before. He turned off his phone. The silence was immediate, profound. He let his head fall back against the seat and closed his eyes, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over him. The world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. Selena would text again later, expecting him to be there, waiting like always. But tonight he wouldn't be. Tonight, Logan Carter was done being an afterthought. The next morning, Logan woke up to the unfamiliar sound of silence. No message notifications. No missed calls from Selena. He reached for his phone instinctively, only to remember that he had turned it off the night before. A habit, a reflex. For years, she had trained him to wait for her, to orbit her like some celestial body caught in her gravity. And for years, he had played his part perfectly. Not anymore. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Sunlight spilled through the window, bathing his apartment in golden light. The space around him was neat but impersonal, a place he lived in but not one he had made his own. He glanced at the mirror across the room, dark circles under his eyes, the remnants of a man who had spent too many nights wondering where he stood in someone else's life. Something had to change. Without thinking too much, Logan got up, threw on a t-shirt, and laced up his running shoes. It had been months since he'd gone for a run, maybe even a year. He used to love it. The way his mind cleared, how his heartbeat steadied into a rhythm that drowned out everything else. As he stepped outside, the crisp morning air hit his face, waking him up in ways coffee never could. He started slow, his body remembering the motion, his muscles protesting at first, but with each step he felt lighter. By the time he finished his first mile, the tension in his chest had begun to unravel. By the third, he realized something. He hadn't thought about Selena once. The first week without her was the hardest, not because he missed her, at least not in the way he thought he would, but because he had no idea who he was without her. His routines had been built around her, texting good morning, planning his evenings around when she might be free, dropping everything the second she wanted his attention. Now there was nothing. No messages, no excuses, no waiting. At first, it felt like something was missing. Then he realized it wasn't something. It was her hold on him. So he filled the space she had left. Logan went back to the gym, not just for the physical aspect, but for the discipline, the focus. He reconnected with old friends, the ones he had pushed aside because Selena always came first. He even started picking up extra projects at work, something that had once been an afterthought in the haze of his one-sided relationship, and slowly, day by day, he felt the shift. The weight of her absence stopped feeling like loss. It started feeling like freedom. One evening, about 2 weeks after he had last spoken to Selena, Logan found himself in a quiet cafe downtown. A new spot, one he had never been to before, somewhere he wouldn't have to worry about running into her. He had a book in one hand and a fresh cup of coffee in the other, genuinely enjoying the stillness. When a soft voice broke his focus. "Hey, is this seat taken?" He looked up. She wasn't like Selena. Her beauty wasn't the kind that demanded attention. It was the kind that invited it. Warm brown eyes, a kind smile, and effortless presence. "No," Logan said, gesturing for her to sit. As she slid into the seat across from him, something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. It wasn't regret. It wasn't pain. It was possibility. For the first time in years, Logan wasn't waiting for Selena to call. He wasn't rehearsing what he'd say if she suddenly decided he was worth her time again. Instead, he was sitting across from a woman who made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. At ease. Her name was Haley Brooks. They had only just met, but there was something natural about the way she carried herself. She didn't try too hard. She didn't play games. She just was. They talked about simple things. The book in his hand, her love for coffee, his rediscovered love for running. It was effortless, a stark contrast to the exhausting unpredictability of his past relationship. And he didn't think about Selena once until that night. Selena was never one for self-reflection. She had always believed Logan would be there, orbiting her life like a planet trapped in her gravitational pull. She never imagined a day when he wouldn't answer her messages, when his name wouldn't appear first in her notifications, when she wouldn't be able to snap her fingers and have him come running. But that day had come. At first, she hadn't even noticed. He had gone quiet before, sulked when she ignored his texts, only to reappear the moment she decided she wanted his attention. This was different. A week passed. Then two. Still no Logan. It was almost amusing at first. Was he playing hard to get? Then it became frustrating. She checked his social media. Private. She scrolled through her photos, stopping at the ones where he was in the background. Always there. Always present. Was he angry? Was he waiting for her to make the first move? Fine. Tell him, hey, been a while. Miss you. Let's talk. She expected the usual, his immediate response, his eagerness, the way he always put her first. But this time, no reply. She tried again the next day. So are you and Logan? Silently, her stomach twisted. He had never ignored her before, not even when she had been cruel, dismissive, careless, not even when she had kept him at arm's length, making sure he never got too close, never became something she had to truly choose. Something was wrong, and she had a sickening feeling she already knew what it was. She found out on accident. A mutual friend posted a story, just a brief clip, barely 3 seconds long. Logan, sitting in a cafe, laughing with her. Selena froze, her grip tightening around her phone. Who the hell was she? She replayed the clip over and over again. There was something in his face, something she hadn't seen in a long time, maybe ever. He looked light, like he wasn't carrying the weight of waiting for someone to love him back. Selena's chest tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Logan wasn't expecting her when she showed up at his apartment. It was late, almost midnight, the kind of hour she used to summon him like a loyal pet. The knock was sharp, impatient. He almost didn't answer. Almost. When he opened the door, he saw exactly what he expected. Selena. Perfectly put together, like she hadn't spent the last hour pacing outside, debating whether or not to knock. Her lips parted slightly as if she hadn't actually planned what to say once he opened the door. He just stood there, waiting. She blinked, then let out a small, breathy laugh. Wow, so this is what it takes for you to ignore me, huh? He didn't smile, didn't invite her in. I've been busy, he said simply. Selena's confidence faltered for the briefest second before she recovered. She tilted her head, studying him. You look good, she meant it. He did. The Logan standing in front of her wasn't the same man she had strung along for years. His posture was different, more self-assured, like he no longer needed her validation, like he had already moved on. The realization sent a sharp sting through her chest. She tried again. I've missed you. She expected him to soften, to let her in, to fall back into the pattern they had spent years creating. Instead, Logan just gave a small, unreadable nod. You only miss me now that I'm not around, he said. It wasn't a question, it was the truth. Selena's stomach dropped. For the first time, she felt something foreign when she looked at Logan. Uncertainty, he had always been hers. No matter how far she pushed, no matter how many times she left him hanging, he had always been waiting. But now, she wasn't so sure. You're seeing someone, she blurted before she could stop herself. He didn't answer right away, and that told her everything. Her nails dug into her palm. It's that girl, Logan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Selena, why are you here? She hated that question. She wanted to say, because you're mine? She wanted to say, because you're not supposed to be happy without me. Instead, she whispered, can we talk? Logan looked at her for a long time as if considering it. Then finally, he shook his head. There's nothing left to say. For the first time in her life, Selena understood what it felt like to be on the other side. To be the one standing in the cold, watching someone walk away without looking back. And it hurt like hell. Selena had never known what it was like to chase. She had always been the one pursued, the one desired, the one men tried to impress, and Logan had been no different. Until now. For years, she had assumed his love was endless, an unbreakable thread tying him to her no matter how carelessly she pulled. She had believed he would always be there, waiting in the shadows, until she decided she was ready for him. But she had miscalculated. Because Logan had walked away. And worse, he wasn't looking back. Selena wasn't used to rejection. It gnawed at her. An unfamiliar ache lodged deep in her chest. The sight of him with her, that girl, had been a punch to the gut she hadn't expected. It wasn't just that Logan had moved on. It was the way he looked without her. Lighter, happier, freer. And that wasn't right. That wasn't how their story was supposed to go. Selena tried to push the thoughts away, tried to pretend it didn't bother her, but it did. She found herself checking his social media more often than she'd admit. analyzing every post, every comment, every glimpse into his new life. He didn't post much. He never had, but when he did, it was different now. He wasn't just there anymore. He was thriving. The gym photos, the weekend hikes, the new places he had never taken her to, and always there was her. Haley, the woman who had slipped into his life while Selena wasn't looking. At first, Selena told herself it was nothing. Logan would get bored. He would realize Haley wasn't hurt, but weeks passed, and he didn't come back. The first time she accidentally ran into him, it wasn't an accident at all. She had spent an embarrassing amount of time figuring out where he might be. She knew his habits, his routines, the places he liked. And so one Saturday afternoon, she found herself in the same coffee shop where she had seen that cursed video of him laughing with Haley. She walked in wearing his favorite shade of red, her hair perfectly styled, her confidence carefully reconstructed. And there he was, sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in front of him, flipping through a book like he didn't have a care in the world. For a moment, she hesitated. Would he even care that she was here? But then, as if sensing her presence, Logan glanced up. Their eyes met. And for the first time in years, she saw something in his gaze she had never seen before when he looked at her. Indifference. Her stomach twisted. But she forced a smile, sauntering over like it was the most natural thing in the world. Logan, she greeted smoothly, tilting her head. Wow, it's been a while. He set his book down, his expression unreadable. Yeah, it has. That was it. No warmth, no hesitation, just a simple acknowledgement. Selena swallowed. This wasn't going how she had expected. She gestured at the chair across from him. Mind if I sit? For a second, she thought he might say no, but then he shrugged. Go ahead. She took it as a small victory. They talked, if you could even call it that. Selena tried to make it seem casual, effortless, as if she hadn't spent weeks thinking about this moment. She asked how he was, what he'd been up to, even made a few jokes, hoping to slip back into their old rhythm. But Logan didn't bite. His answers were polite but distant. His laughter, once so easy around her, never came. And he never mentioned Haley. Well, he didn't have to. Because when Selena leaned in slightly, giving him the flirtatious smile that had always worked before, Logan just sat back, unmoved. Unreachable. She hated it. Logan, she finally said, letting a hint of vulnerability slip into her voice. I miss you. Something flickered in his expression. Not longing, not regret, just patience. Like he had expected this. I know, he said simply. Selena blinked. That's it? Logan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Selena, I cared about you. A lot. But I was always the one holding on. His gaze met hers, steady. And I let go. Her breath hitched. But there is no we, he interrupted gently but firmly. Not anymore. Selena opened her mouth, searching for the right words, the right way to undo all of this. But before she could say anything, Logan's phone vibrated on the table. Haley's name. A text. A simple message. See you soon? And for the first time, Selena understood. She had lost him. Not in the way she had always feared, dramatically, with shouting and slam doors and ugly fights. She had lost him in the quiet way that truly mattered. He had moved on. And she was just a memory of what he had left behind. Selena sat in her apartment, staring blankly at the untouched glass of wine on her coffee table. The city lights outside her window flickered, casting patterns on the walls, but she barely noticed. Her mind was still replaying that moment. Logan's quiet, unwavering voice telling her he had let go. She had never expected those words, not from him. For years, Logan had been her constant, her safe bet. No matter how much she pushed him away, no matter how little she gave in return, he had always been there, and now he wasn't. Now he belonged to someone else. She had gone to that cafe hoping for what? A second chance? An easy reunion where Logan would look at her the way he used to, as if she was the center of his world. Instead, she had found a man who no longer needed her, and it was the most unfamiliar, unsettling feeling she had ever known. Logan, meanwhile, had left the cafe with an undeniable sense of closure. For the first time in years, he felt no lingering weight, no regrets, no what-ifs. Seeing Selena again had been strange, like revisiting a place he had once called home, only to realize he had long since outgrown it. He had expected her to try to win him back, to act like nothing had changed, but he hadn't expected the sharp realization that hit him mid-conversation. He didn't love her anymore. It wasn't bitterness or anger, it wasn't resentment, it was just nothing. He had let her go long before she even realized she had lost him, and that was the difference between them. She had spent so long assuming he would always be there, assuming his love was unconditional, that she had never stopped to consider what would happen if he walked away. And now here he was, standing outside the cafe, his phone buzzing in his pocket with a message from Haley. Not an obligation, not a distraction, just a future he wanted to walk toward. That night, Selena did something she had never done before. She sat with her own silence. There were no impulsive texts, no desperate phone calls, no half-hearted attempts to manipulate her way back into Logan's life, because she knew she could feel it in the emptiness of her apartment, in the way the night stretched endlessly before her. She had taken him for granted, and now it was too late. The realization was bitter, but even more than that, it was lonely. She had spent so much time keeping people at arm's length, convincing herself she didn't need anyone, that now, when she actually wanted someone, she had no one left to reach for. Logan had been her safety net, her unwavering constant, and now she was standing at the edge, with nothing beneath her. For the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to be left behind. Logan and Haley walked side by side along the waterfront a few nights later, the cool evening breeze swirling around them. He didn't have to force conversation with her, didn't have to fight for her attention, didn't have to prove his worth. It was easy. And that, he realized, was what love was supposed to be. Haley glanced at him, a soft smile curving her lips. "You okay?" Logan met her gaze, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't have to think about his answer. "Yeah," he said, nodding, "I really am." And as they continued walking, the past faded further into the distance. Because Logan Carter wasn't looking back anymore. He was finally moving forward.